Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it is time for part 5 in the Monday Q&A, and God, I'm glad to finally get to the final one. So let's get to the first question. Is there any risk of central or peripheral nervous system burnout by getting really amped up before heavy sets of 3 to 5 reps? I think you may have mentioned this before, but could you go into more detail? This is very individual, but yes, there is more fatigue placed upon the nervous system if you are really hyped up and amped up and make yourself angry before you do your work sets. And yes, that can impede your recovery a little bit, but it's also an issue of total frequency and volume. If you're not training on an ultra high frequency and you only really get amped up for that one big set per session, I don't think it's as big of a deal. When you're trying to train on a system to where you're squatting 5 days a week and you're amping yourself up on those squats, or you're squatting 6 or 7 days a week, it can become a problem. You will start noticing nervous system fatigue. Potentially you're going to overreach a lot easier. So it's really an issue of total workload and training volume that's going to affect that. And I recommend people in ultra high frequency training to keep those heavy work sets fairly calm and focused and not make themselves angry. Save that anger for actual competitions, or when you really want to test a true max and you want to video it for some reason. That's when you should really save the anger and really hype yourself up psychologically. But then again, some people run systems that have a max effort day every single week, and for those people, they might actually hype themselves up for their max effort work. So it depends on the type of system you're running also, but it's not something you should be doing on a daily basis unless you're putting enough drugs into your body to help you recover. Because it's simply not giving you any further strength or muscle gains by doing so regularly. And all it does is impede your recovery a bit. All right, next question. According to the China study, rats fed with a diet of 20% animal protein saw a huge rise in activation of cancer cells compared to rats fed a much smaller 5% animal protein in their diets. Your thoughts on this? My thoughts on this, and again, this is coming from someone who eats no animal protein. I'm really skeptical of using rat studies like that and applying them to humans, because I've seen countless studies done on rats that people try to apply to humans for everything from steroids to supplements to protein intake. And the reality is we are not rodents. We are not mice or rats. Our biochemistry is different enough that you can't carry these over. What these rat studies and mice studies should do is open up further research into humans, because if we find something happens in rats with a food source or a drug or a supplement, then we would say, well, maybe there's a possibility that will happen in humans, but we need to test this. We can't just say that because something happens in rats that it happens in humans. Now, I think it's interesting, and I would like to see further studies done on humans to really see if there are these type of benefits of eating an omnivore versus a vegetarian versus a vegan diet. But until we really get better studies on that with multivariate analysis, I think it's jumping the gun to draw those type of conclusions based upon rat studies. So to me, it's nothing more than something that's interesting that maybe we need to look at it in humans closer, but I wouldn't draw conclusions from it. All right, guys, last question for the week. Will my small wrists hinder my strength gains on the bench press? I actually have fairly small wrists myself, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah, if you're going completely raw, those small wrists can cause you problems on the bench press, particularly if you start getting really strong, 400 pounds, 500 pounds. But even with lighter weights, if your wrists are starting to hurt, invest in a good set of wrist wraps. Wrist wraps are allowed even at powerlifting meets. They are still considered raw. No one will ever knock you for wearing wrist wraps on a bench press. So if your wrist support is an issue, go ahead and wrap them up on all your heavy pressing. It's a very easy fix for that, particularly for people with smaller wrist joints. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on it today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you next time. Let me give you guys one last bicep shot before I go.